Marques Brownlee, or MKBHD as he's also known, is someone that I never thought would be in the center of any YouTube controversies. The guy's just a YouTuber who reviews things like Apple products, computers, and other stuff in the tech field, so there seemingly shouldn't be any issues with this. Aside from people sometimes disliking his opinions, the guy seemed pretty inoffensive generally, but two situations would happen this year, which would partially damage his reputation. Now, not fully mind you, in fact, I bet that in a few months, Marques will be completely fine and this stuff will just serve as a small footnote in his career, but this is significant enough that a large amount of backlash is coming his way even to this day, which I find interesting. The two things he's gotten a major amount of flack for is a wallpaper app, mainly because of the absurd prices of it, and here's the funny one, driving 96 miles per hour in a 36 mile per hour school zone. I wish I was joking. And these two things are what I'm gonna be discussing today. Not gonna pad out the intro any longer, subscribe to the channel if you like videos like this one, and let's take a look at the fractured reputation of Marques Brownlee. On September 23rd, Marques would announce Panels, which was a wallpaper app for both iOS and Android, and almost right away, he would start to get a lot of flack for it. On the surface, it just looked like people were getting upset at some dumb app. I didn't really see any point in getting it myself, since I got my phone wallpaper from Google, and I don't really change it, like, at all. But hey, if that fits how you use your phone, then more power to you. But as I looked into it for this video, the actual issues of the app became way more obvious. The biggest thing that people had an issue with is that full resolution wallpapers were locked behind a paywall at $12 a month or $50 a year under a subscription service called Panels Plus, and apparently the app was also littered with ads at the time as well, though I can't really confirm that as the app has gone through some changes since it launched. Weird pricing aside, I just don't know who would actually want to pay for a subscription service in the first place on an app that just gives you wallpapers. It seems like a really dumb move to me to waste your money on that, especially since you can literally just get high quality wallpapers on Google, and for something that's already a niche market, it's probably an even smaller percent of those people who would even get the subscription for it. So I just don't get it from a logistics standpoint, really. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Marques is making $1 million a day off of these subscriptions and is becoming richer, while I live in a cardboard box in 20 years because I didn't go by his example. We'll see how this goes. But anyways, one of the other issues that people brought up was the privacy report for the app, which, let's say, checked a lot more boxes than something as simple as a wallpaper app should have. So it got people worried. I don't think that a wallpaper app should have been asking for all this, but considering that most social media services steal your data and information in some way, this was just shady at most in my eyes, and I didn't really care. There were more issues regarding the app, but those were the main ones to note from the whole thing. To sum it up, he made a wallpaper app with a subscription service that was riddled with ads and could have been a privacy nightmare, and this is pretty bad for his reputation at the time, so he ended up having to respond. And was his response to everything any good? Well, yes actually. He was able to take the criticism he was getting very well, and he adjusted things accordingly. The most significant thing to me anyways is that instead of locking full resolution wallpapers behind a paywall, you would instead just have to watch ads to unlock them, which can be annoying, sure, but it's a way better method than what was going on before, and it gives the people who just want to use the app for free an actually good experience, so that's all good. He also addressed the whole privacy thing and explained that the app didn't actually ask for everything that was specified in the screenshot. Whenever putting the app up on the App Store, Marques and his team just checked way too many boxes on what the app will be looking at on your phone. So in reality, it wasn't the privacy nightmare that it was being portrayed as. It was just a dumb mistake that him and his team made, and that was that. So yeah, his response satisfied me here. I'm sure there will be some people in the comments saying that I didn't go hard enough on him in this section, but while I do think that many things in this app were bad off the jump, I don't think that this was nearly as much of a big issue as people were claiming it to be. I think the hate gets amplified because Marques himself is a product reviewer, so if he makes a bad product, people will hound him for it more than the average person. Because in theory, he should know better. I can get this mindset, trust me, but to me, everyone will make mistakes sometimes. Especially if it's something like this, I'm not really going to be too harsh with it. He's very clearly willing to listen to what people are saying and improve, so I don't really care about this from this point on. But there's a topic with Marques that I actually do care about a bit, which transitions me into my next section. Moving on. On November 11th, 2024, Marques would release a video called How My Video Gear is Changing, essentially just showing what the title stated, how his video gear was changing. Not really noteworthy at all on the surface. In fact, this is a pretty boring video if you really get down to watching it. So why am I mentioning it here? Well, there was a clip in the video where he was driving a car pretty fast. In fact, me saying this is downplaying the severity of it. People inspected the clip and realized that he was driving 96 miles per hour at a 36-mile-per-hour school zone. Yes, that's what the controversy is about. This is pretty interesting to me, honestly, because I haven't seen many people get flack for something like this. The most I've seen related to this is from kick streamers, but let's be real, that sort of thing is expected from them. Not from non-controversial tech reviewer Marques Brownlee. So again, this is interesting. And I just find the whole thing to be pretty reckless to begin with. Let's begin with the actual act itself, the speeding. Was this really necessary, especially in a school zone? I don't really care about speeding in general as long as it isn't enough to where you're hurting people. I live in an area where if you don't speed at least a little bit, you're bound to get hit, so I understand why people will do it, but there is no point in doing it that much. It's just dangerous. There's no other way to put it. And it seemed like Marques was aware of how dangerous this was and how this looked from a PR perspective, so he ended up blurring his dashboard in a certain part of the video, seemingly trying to hide how fast he was going, which didn't work, by the way, since there was another gauge to show how fast he was going. So he knew how bad it looked and tried to hide how fast he was going, but only lazily edited it. That's kind of funny to me. And it clearly didn't work, as I'm talking about this right now. Him blurring it only caused more backlash to go his way. And something else that confuses me about this whole thing is that if he was willing to go through the effort to blur the dashboard, why not just edit the clip out of the video entirely? This whole thing is a PR disaster for him and could have been entirely prevented had he just not included it. I don't know if he has editors or does stuff himself, but somebody had to have known that this looked bad. And it's not like it's just negligence. They literally edited the scene with a speeding by blurring part of it. So I just don't get this at all. But even if we put the PR stuff to the side completely, this is really odd to post from a legal sense. He literally posted evidence of him going 61 miles per hour over the speed limit, which could get him into some trouble. Whereas otherwise, he might not have even been caught for this. This is really dumb, like extremely dumb. I'm sure that Marques has the income to deal with this if he had to, but it would have been a lot of hassle that he wouldn't have had to deal with in the first place if he just didn't post the clip. It's completely reckless. I don't want to get too ahead of myself here though. I know that I've criticized this a lot in this section, but the way that I see it, this was just a mistake. A pretty reckless one and something that could have gotten him in a lot of trouble, but a mistake nonetheless. I don't think that Marques is a bad person from this. He deserves to be criticized, but I think that's the extent of it personally. And speaking of him deserving to be criticized, let's go over his response to the situation on Twitter, because I found it to be pretty interesting. In this statement here, he admits that what he did was dumb and took accountability for it, so that's good. But what I have a problem with is this. He decided to cut out the section of him driving that fast from his video, and this was just a bad decision to be honest. His reasoning for it was that he didn't want to make it seem like what he did was okay, but here's the thing. I don't think that leaving the section up in the video really implies that it was a good thing to do. Hell, everyone who watched the video knew it wasn't okay, because it's his video with the most backlash by far, so it doesn't really make sense for him to remove it like this. It really just makes it seem like he's trying to hide what happened, though that theory also falls flat considering that he addressed the section on a pinned comment and also addressed it on Twitter, so at this point, I have no idea what exactly he's trying to do here. If I could sum this whole thing up, I think it's pretty funny that a YouTuber got into controversy for speeding. I think what happened kind of sucked and his response was odd, but also, this isn't the end of the world. Marques will be able to come back from this with time. For now though, he'll have to deal with his comments being filled with jokes like this for the next few weeks, which I think is funny, and hopefully he gets some laughs out of it. But that's pretty much all I have to say in this section. Moving on. After I finished researching for this video, I realized that I much prefer talking about drama situations that are relatively light, instead of the types where someone is just exposed for being one of the worst people to exist. And there's a bit of irony in that statement, since my most popular video by far is the Misfits one, but it's still something I stand by. Don't get me wrong, I'll still cover stuff if it interests me. I'm never gonna pass up a topic just because it's too harsh. But if that's all you cover, it could be a bit draining sometimes, so stories like this are a huge refresher for me. Just a guy making a lot of mistakes that are deserving deserving of criticism. That's appealing to me. Though not everyone will agree with me here, and that's fine. At the end of the day, although Marques has done shitty things here, he's nowhere near as bad as the others that I've covered. And he seems to take criticism well, albeit with some odd decisions going with that sometimes. I wish the guy well and hope that his stuff doesn't happen again, and I wish that his career is successful following this. That's it for this video. Thank you guys for watching. My other social media accounts are in the description, as well as the second channel video I made, so go check those out, and I'll see you in the next video. Oh yeah, one last thing. #FLM.